The crystalline spires of the Avenari capital pierced the violet sky like frozen lightning, their surfaces humming with the neural frequencies that bound the empire together. Within the highest tower, Princess Kestra pressed her palm against the cool wall, feeling the vibrations of 1,000 connected minds flowing through the crystal lattice, connections she had never been permitted to share. "Your Highness," came the familiar voice of Alara, her personal attendant. The older Avenari woman's footsteps echoed softly on the polished floor. "The human delegation has arrived for the ceremony." Kestra turned from the window, her pale, unseeing eyes reflecting the crystal's ethereal glow. Where other Avenari bore the traditional silver marks of neural compatibility across their temples, hers remained unmarked, blank as her vision. "How many volunteers this time?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. None have stepped forward yet, Princess." Alara's voice carried the familiar weight of pity that Kestra had grown to despise. 23 years she had lived. In this tower, 23 bonding ceremonies where she had been presented to the court like a broken artifact. The neural bonding was sacred among the Avenari, a sharing of consciousness that created unbreakable loyalty between warriors and their leaders, between royals and their chosen companions. But who would bond with a defective princess, a blind heir who could never truly lead? "Tell me about the humans," Kestra said, smoothing her ceremonial robes. The fabric was embedded with neural conductive threads that would theoretically enhance bonding, if anyone ever attempted it with her. "Their ambassador is called Thane Corvin. He's different from what I expected." Alara hesitated. "He asked specifically about you, Princess, about your condition and why you haven't bonded." A flutter of something, hope, stirred in Kestra's chest. "What did you tell him?" "The truth, that your blindness makes you incompatible with the neural matrices, that it's dangerous." The ceremony hall thrummed with anticipation as Kestra entered, guided by Alara's gentle touch. She could feel the assembled court's emotions like distant storms, curiosity, disdain, boredom. The humans registered differently, their minds alien, yet somehow warmer than her own people's crystalline thoughts. High Commander Vex's voice rang out across the hall. "We gather today to honor the ancient rites of bonding, to strengthen the ties between our peoples through the sacred sharing of consciousness. Princess Kestra of the royal bloodline seeks her neural partner." The ritual words felt hollow after so many repetitions. Kestra knelt on the bonding dais, the neural crown placed upon her head. Its weight was familiar, a reminder of all the connections she couldn't make. Silence stretched like a held breath. 1 minute. 2. The familiar shame began to burn in her chest. Then footsteps. Not the measured gait of an Avenari warrior, but something different. Heavier. More purposeful. "I volunteer." The voice was deep, accented with unfamiliar tones. Human. Gasps echoed through the hall, followed by angry murmurs. "Impossible," Vex snarled. "Humans cannot bond with royalty. It's forbidden." "Your treaty says otherwise," the human replied, calmly. Article 7, subsection 3. All diplomatic exchanges shall include opportunities for cultural and neural sharing between representatives of both species. Kestra felt him approach. Thane Corvin, she realized. His emotions were a calm sea compared to the storm raging in her court. Determination, compassion, and underneath it all, something that made her breath catch. Genuine curiosity about her, not pity for her condition. "You don't understand the risks," she whispered as he knelt beside her on the dais. "I'm broken. The bond could fail catastrophically." She felt his hand cover hers, warm, calloused, utterly alien. "I've studied your people for years, Princess. I don't think you're broken at all. I think you're something they've never seen before." The bonding crown expanded to accommodate two minds. Kestra had felt its neural tendrils before, reaching into her consciousness and finding nothing to grasp. But now, the connection blazed to life between them like a star being born. Kestra gasped, as foreign sensations flooded her awareness. Light, color, depth, dimension. Through Thane's eyes, she saw herself for the first time, not broken but different. Beautiful in her own way, with silver hair that caught the crystal light and skin that seemed to glow with its own luminescence. But it was more than sight. She felt his wonder at her empathic abilities, dormant until now but awakening through their connection. She could sense the emotional undercurrents of everyone in the hall, the shock, the fear, the growing realization that everything they believed about neural bonding was about to change. Impossible, Vex breathed, but his voice shook with something beyond disbelief. Fear. Kestra smiled for the first time in years, her hand tightening around Thane's. Through their bond, she felt his answering smile warm as sunlight on her face. The unwanted princess was unwanted no more. Dawn came like a revelation. Kestra had never understood the concept before. How could she when darkness and light were merely words? But through Thane's neural link, she experienced her first sunrise from the palace balcony, watching in wonder as violet shadows gave way to gold and crimson fire across the sky. It's everything, she whispered, tears streaming down her face as she gripped the balcony rail. Through their bond, she felt Thane's gentle amusement mixed with profound joy at her reaction. This is just the beginning, his mental voice caressed. Her thoughts. There's so much more to show you. The past 3 days since their bonding had been a whirlwind of sensation and discovery. Not just sight, though that miracle alone left her breathless, but a deeper awareness of the world around her. Through their connection, Kestra found she could sense the emotional resonance of others with startling clarity. The fear radiating from nervous servants, the jealousy seething from younger courtiers, the carefully controlled rage emanating from High Commander Vex whenever he looked upon their joined hands. The council grows restless, Alara warned as she brought them breakfast on the balcony. The attendants' own emotions were a complex weave of happiness for her princess and worry about the future. Kestra nodded, still marveling at the simple act of watching steam rise from her cup. Vex has been whispering poison in their ears. He sees our bond as contamination of the royal bloodline. Thane's jaw tightened. Through their link, she felt his protective instincts flare. He's afraid of what you represent, a princess who doesn't need their approval to be powerful. Their afternoon was spent in the palace archives, where Thane shared his memories of human worlds while Kestra showed him the hidden histories of her people. The intimacy of the mental sharing was unlike anything either had experienced, deeper than words, more honest than physical touch. Your people's music, Kestra mused, as she experienced a symphony through his memories. It's so different from our crystal harmonics. Wild, emotional, like you, Thane murmured, his hand tracing the line of her jaw. They told me Avenari were cold, logical, but you feel everything so deeply. The evening brought them to the hanging gardens where bioluminescent flowers created patterns of light that shifted with the wind. Kestra gasped at the beauty, seeing it not just through Thane's eyes but sensing the living energy of each plant through her awakening empathic abilities. I never knew, she breathed, reaching out to touch a flower that pulsed with warm amber light. I can feel their contentment, their simple joy in existing. You're changing, Thane observed, wonder coloring his thoughts. Each day, your abilities grow stronger. I think the neural bonding didn't just give you sight. It unlocked something that was always there. They found themselves drawn closer on the garden bench, the night air warm around them. Thane's hand found hers, and the simple contact sent waves of sensation through their bond. He had been careful these past days, respectful of her inexperience, but the attraction between them was a living thing that grew stronger with each shared moment. I've never, Kestra began, then stopped, embarrassed. Neither have I, Thane admitted through their link. Not like this. Not with someone who shares my very thoughts. When he kissed her, it was with the gentleness of a man who understood how precious and new this was for her. But Kestra felt the restraint he held, the deeper passion he kept carefully controlled. Through their bond, she experienced not just the physical sensation, but the emotional reality of being desired, cherished, protected. "I'm not fragile," she whispered against his lips, her hands fisting in his shirt. "I don't want you to hold back." The second kiss was different, hungry, desperate, filled with days of building tension. Kestra felt herself responding with an intensity that surprised them both, her empathic abilities amplifying every sensation until they were lost in a feedback loop of desire and connection. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. Thane's emotions were a storm of want and protective tenderness, while Kestra marveled at the new sensations coursing through her body. "We should be careful," Thane said reluctantly. "Your people already see our bond as scandalous. If we let them talk," Kestra interrupted, her voice stronger than it had ever been. "For the first time in my life, I know who I am. I know what I want." But even as they held each other in the garden's gentle light, both could sense the storm gathering around them. Through her empathic abilities, Kestra felt the malevolent attention focused on them from the palace's darker corners. Vex was planning something. She could taste his hatred like poison in the air. "Whatever comes," she whispered, "we face it together." Thane's arms tightened around her. "Together," he agreed, sealing the promise with another kiss that burned through their neural link like wildfire. Neither of them noticed the shadow watching from the tower above, or felt the cold satisfaction radiating from High Commander Vex as he observed their intimate moment with calculating eyes. The assassination attempt came at dawn. Kestra woke to the screaming discord of violent intentions piercing her empathic awareness like shattered glass. She bolted upright in her chambers, gasping as waves of murderous rage crashed over her newly awakened senses. "Thane!" she cried out through their bond, but his mental presence was muffled, distant, drugged, she realized with growing horror. The palace corridors had never been navigated by her alone, but her evolving abilities painted them in emotional topography, fear sent from servants who had been paid to look away, cold determination from armed figures moving through passages they shouldn't know, and underneath it all, Vex's satisfaction like a poisonous undercurrent. She found Thane in the diplomatic quarters, unconscious and bound while 3 Avenari assassins prepared their killing blades. The leader looked up in shock as she entered. "Princess, you should not be here. Return to your chambers and you will not be harmed." "Release him," Kestra commanded, her voice carrying new authority. Through her empathic abilities, she could feel their uncertainty, their reluctance to harm royalty despite their orders. "I'm sorry, Your Highness. The High Commander's orders were clear. The human contamination must be cleansed from the bloodline." They moved toward Thane's still form, but Kestra stepped between them. For the first time in her life, her blindness became an advantage. She could sense their positions, their intentions, their hesitations in ways they couldn't understand. When the first assassin lunged, she knew exactly where to move. The burst of empathic feedback she sent through their nervous systems was pure instinct, a projection of every moment of pain, loneliness, and despair she had ever felt. All 3 attackers crumpled, overwhelmed by emotions that weren't their own. Thane's eyes fluttered open as she cut his bonds with a fallen knife. "Kestra, how did you—" "Later," she gasped, helping him to his feet. "We need to leave now." But Vex was waiting in the corridor beyond, flanked by a dozen loyal guards. His emotional signature was a glacier of cold contempt. "Remarkable," he said, studying the unconscious assassins. "So the rumors are true. The human contamination has awakened something unnatural in you." "There's nothing unnatural about empathy," Kestra replied, moving protectively in front of Thane. "Perhaps that's why you can't understand it." Vex's laugh was like breaking crystal. "Empathy? Is that what you call this corruption? You've become something neither human nor Avenari, a mongrel consciousness that threatens everything our empire stands for." "Our empire," Kestra said, her voice growing stronger with each word, "stands for connection, for the bonding of minds in perfect unity. I am more connected than any of you have ever been." She could feel the guards' wavering loyalty, their confusion about attacking their princess. But Vex's will was iron, and they would follow orders despite their doubts. The standoff might have ended in bloodshed, but Thane's hand found hers, and their neural link flared to brilliant life. Through their connection, Kestra suddenly understood, something that changed everything. "You're afraid," she said to Vex, wonder in her voice. "Not of contamination. You're afraid that what Thane and I have achieved will make the old ways obsolete. That other Avenari will want what we have found together." For a moment, Vex's emotional mask slipped, revealing the truth underneath. Fear. Desperate. Clawing. Fear that his ordered world was crumbling. "Seize them," he snarled, but his command lacked conviction. The guards hesitated, and in that moment of uncertainty, Kestra acted. She opened her empathic abilities fully, projecting not pain or despair this time, but something far more powerful. The pure joy of connection she felt with Thane. The overwhelming love that had grown between them. The wonder of truly knowing another soul completely. The effect was instantaneous. The guards lowered their weapons, tears streaming down their faces as they experienced, for just a moment, what true bonding could feel like. Even Vex staggered, his emotional walls cracking under the assault of genuine connection. "This is what we could all have," Kestra said softly, her words carrying to every corner of the corridor. Not the cold hierarchy of duty bonds, but real understanding, real love. In the chaos that followed, she and Thane escaped to her private chambers. The door sealed behind them. They fell into each other's arms with desperate intensity. "I thought I'd lost you," Thane whispered, his hands shaking as they traced her face. "Never," Kestra replied, pulling him down for a kiss that was hungry with relief and growing passion. "We're bound too deeply now." Their lovemaking that night was tender and fierce by turns, their neural connection amplifying every touch, every whispered endearment. Kestra marveled at the new sensations, both physical and emotional, while Thane was overwhelmed by experiencing intimacy through her empathic abilities. Afterward, as they lay entwined in the crystal light filtering through her windows, Kestra felt the change in the palace around them. Word was spreading of what had happened, of the power she had displayed. Some reacted with fear, others with wonder. "Everything's different now," she murmured against Thane's chest. "Yes," he agreed, his arms tightening around her. "And tomorrow, they'll come for us in earnest." But tonight was theirs, and in the growing strength of their bond, both felt something they'd never known before. The absolute certainty that they could face anything as long as they faced it together. The coup came 3 days later, swift and merciless. Kestra woke to Alara's urgent whispers and the taste of smoke in the air. "Princess, you must flee. High Commander Vex has declared you unfit to rule. He claims your bonding with the human has made you a threat to the Empire." Through the neural link, she felt Thane's consciousness. Distant, pained, fading. Terror gripped her heart as she realized he was being tortured, his captors trying to sever their connection through agony. "Where is he?" she demanded, throwing on her traveling clothes with hands that shook with rage rather than fear. "The old fortress in the lower city." "Princess, you cannot." "I can and I will." Kestra's voice carried an authority that made even loyal Alara step back. "Vex thinks my blindness makes me weak, that I need to be protected. He's about to learn how wrong he is." The palace corridors swarmed with Vex's soldiers, but Kestra's empathic abilities had grown exponentially in the days since the assassination attempt. She could feel their positions, their attention, their emotional states with crystalline clarity. Moving through the shadows became a dance of sensation rather than sight. The lower city was a maze of narrow alleys and forgotten passages that even the native-born Avenari rarely navigated. But Kestra had spent her isolation mapping every emotional current in the palace, and now she applied that same skill to the streets. The fear of hiding citizens, the determination of resistance fighters, the cold satisfaction of occupation forces, all painted a path through the chaos. "Princess," a voice called from a shadowed doorway. An old shopkeeper beckoned her inside. This way, we know what you've done for us." She paused, confused. "What I've done?" "Word has spread of your gift," the elderly Avenari explained as he led her through hidden passages. "How you made the guards feel what connection truly means. The lower castes have lived our whole lives without neural bonding. We were deemed unworthy. But if you can bond with a human," understanding dawned. Her display of empathic power hadn't just challenged Vex's authority. It had given hope to everyone the rigid caste system had left behind. The underground network of forgotten citizens moved her through the city with efficiency, born of desperation. In abandoned tunnels and hidden chambers, she met others who had been cast aside. Failed bonding candidates, those born without neural compatibility, entire families deemed genetically inferior. "Help us reach the fortress," she pleaded with their leaders. "Help me save the human who showed me that different doesn't mean broken." "We will," promised Keth, a scarred Avenari who had been expelled from the military for questioning orders. "But what can you offer us in return? If we succeed, if you reclaim power, will you remember the forgotten ones?" Kestra's answer came without hesitation. "I will create a new Avenari empire, one where bonding is chosen, not assigned, where different gifts are celebrated, not feared." The assault on the fortress began at nightfall. Kestra's empathy guided the rebels through defensive positions while her connection to Thane pulled her deeper into the stronghold's heart. With each step closer, his pain became hers. Vex's torturers were skilled at inflicting agony without permanent damage, trying to break their neural bond through sheer suffering. She found him in the deepest dungeon, chained between neural dampers, designed to sever psychic connections. His body bore the marks of systematic torture, but his eyes blazed with unbroken defiance when she entered. "Kestra?" His voice was a broken whisper. "You shouldn't have come. It's a trap." She was already moving toward him when Vex emerged from the shadows, flanked by his elite guard. "Indeed it is. Did you really think I wouldn't anticipate your rescue attempt? Your empathic abilities make you predictable. You cannot abandon those you care about." "No," Kestra agreed, her hand steady as she began freeing Thane from his bonds. "I can't, but you've misunderstood what that means." "Enlighten me. It means I'll never stop fighting for them." The chains fell away, and she helped Thane to his feet. "All of them. Every forgotten citizen, every failed candidate, every person your rigid system has discarded." Vex laughed coldly. "Noble words from a blind pretender. You cannot even see your enemies approaching." "I don't need to see them," Kestra replied, and opened her empathic abilities fully. The wave of connection she projected was different from before. Not the overwhelming joy of bonding, but something deeper. The profound satisfaction of belonging, of being valued, of having a place in something greater than oneself. Every soldier in the fortress felt it, experienced for one shining moment what it meant to be truly connected to their fellows. Most important, they felt her absolute conviction that everyone deserved that connection. The elite guards dropped their weapons, weeping. Throughout the fortress, soldiers laid down arms and freed prisoners. Even some of Vex's loyal officers found themselves questioning everything they'd believed about neural bonding and social hierarchy. Only Vex himself remained unmoved, his emotional walls too thick and cold to penetrate. "Impossible," he snarled, drawing his personal blade. "I will not let you destroy everything our ancestors built." "Then you'll have to go through both of us," Thane said, straightening despite his injuries. As Vex advanced, Kestra felt their neural bond strengthen, becoming something entirely new. A connection that transcended species that proved love could bridge any gap. The final confrontation was about to begin. The duel between old and new began in the fortress courtyard, witnessed by hundreds of Avenari who had chosen sides in the revolution, now tearing their empire apart. Vex moved with the precision of a master warrior, his blade singing through the air as he struck at Kestra with calculated fury. But she no longer fought blind. Through Thane's eyes and her own empathic awareness, she could anticipate his attacks, feel his intentions before he acted on them. "You cannot win," Vex snarled as their weapons clashed. "I have trained for war, since childhood while you cowered in your tower." "I wasn't cowering," Kestra replied, her voice steady despite the deadly dance they performed. "I was learning to listen, to feel, to understand what others need." Their battle was more than physical. It was a contest between two visions of Avenari society. Vex's rigid hierarchy of neural compatibility against Kestra's dream of chosen connections and valued differences. With each exchange of blows, more soldiers laid down their arms, choosing empathy over tradition. The turning point came when Vex, desperate and enraged, attempted to strike at Thane instead of Kestra. The human was still weak from torture, unable to defend himself properly. But Kestra's empathic abilities had evolved beyond anything the Avenari had imagined possible. She projected her own consciousness into Thane's body, guiding his movements while maintaining awareness of her own. For one impossible moment, she fought from two bodies simultaneously. Her mind expanded across their neural bond to encompass both forms. Vex's blade met empty air as Thane moved with inhuman grace, while Kestra's weapon found its mark from an angle the High Commander never anticipated. Vex fell, his eyes wide with shock and something that might have been respect. "Impossible," he whispered. "No one can maintain dual consciousness. The neural strain should have killed you both." "Maybe it would have killed an ordinary Avenari," Kestra said, kneeling beside him as his life ebbed away. "But I'm not ordinary. I'm something new." With Vex's death, the last organized resistance crumbled, the fortress filled with celebrating voices as news spread throughout the city. The princess had reclaimed her birthright and with it the right to reshape their society. The coronation took place a month later, under the first dawn of spring. The ceremony had been redesigned to reflect Kestra's new vision. Instead of the traditional neural crown worn by a single ruler, she and Thane shared a bonding circlet that symbolized partnership rather than dominance. "I name you not just as my bonded partner," she declared to the assembled crowds, "but as co-regent of a new Avenari empire, one where strength comes from connection, not separation." The changes came swiftly after that. The rigid caste system was abolished, replaced by voluntary bonding networks that allowed anyone to find their perfect neural match regardless of birth status. The lower city districts were rebuilt with crystal resonators that included every citizen in the Empire's communication web. Most revolutionary of all, the neural bonding technology was opened to human Avenari partnerships, creating the first truly interspecies civilization. Not everyone embraced the changes. Some noble families fled to distant colonies, vowing to maintain the old ways. Others adapted slowly, learning to see strength in diversity rather than uniformity. But the majority of citizens, especially those who had been denied connection under the previous system, welcomed the new era with joy. The wedding celebration lasted for 3 days, combining human and Avenari traditions in ways that created entirely new customs. Kestra wore a gown woven with neural fibers that sparkled with the shared emotions of every bonded pair in attendance, while Thane's formal attire included Avenari memory crystals that preserved the story of their unlikely love. Their first dance was performed not just physically, but through their neural link, allowing everyone present to experience the pure harmony of two souls perfectly synchronized. There wasn't a dry eye in the great hall when they moved as one being, their love made manifest for all to witness. "Do you ever regret it?" Thane asked later, as they stood on the palace balcony overlooking their transformed city. "Giving up the quiet life for all this responsibility?" Kestra smiled, her hand finding his as naturally as breathing. Through their bond, she shared the answer before speaking it aloud. "How can I regret becoming who I was always meant to be?" The city below them pulsed with new life, neural networks that included every citizen, human and Avenari working side by side, children being born who would never know the old divisions. In the distance, construction continued on the first mixed colony ships that would carry their united peoples to the stars. "What do you see when you look at our future?" Kestra asked, borrowing his sight as she had learned to do. Thane's response came through their bond, warm with love and bright with possibility. I see a universe where connection transcends every boundary, where love proves stronger than fear, and where the impossible becomes inevitable. As if to prove his words, their bond pulsed with shared awareness of the new life growing within. Kestra, the first child of two species, two worlds, two hearts beating as one. The unwanted princess had become the founder of a new age, and in the arms of the human who had dared to take her hand, she had found not just love, but the power to reshape the stars themselves.